Hi, I'm Mike from Breathing in Motion Yoga, and I'd like to talk to you today about open hip versus closed hip position when you're doing standing postures. So in an open hip position, you'll notice that stepping out to a width that is required for the particular posture, you'll notice that I want to aim my lead foot so that it hits my rear foot, somewhere between the arch and the heel of the rear foot. And in an open hip position, you'll notice that the back foot is turned in a little bit here, and it's turned in on purpose, even though it's named an open hip position. It's more based on the way it feels, whether I go into a lunge or I go into a side bend. It's more the feeling on the inside of the hips opening. The back hip is actually closed a little bit. So if I get the hip bones out here, you can see that the back hip pointer, this is the ASIS, is a little bit forward of the front hip pointer. When I go into the posture, there's a reasonable amount of hip articulation in the ball and socket joint of the hip. So you can see that that's a reasonable articulation in there. If I have my back foot turned the wrong way, so it's turned out, the back ASIS will be behind the front one. And now when I side bend, or if I go into a lunge, you can see that the bone pulls right out of the socket. And there's too much strain in here. There's a pinch on the labrum, the seal around the joint. So in an open hip position, the back foot should be turned in somewhere between 10 and 20 degrees. In the closed hip position, it's quite different. The back hip is going to turn a whole bunch more, and now the back foot is turned at an angle of 45 up to 60 degrees, somewhere in that range, depending on how tense it is in the calf, depending on whether the hips want to turn. You've got a parameter to work with. And the reason for that is so that as I go into my lunge or I go into a forward bend, I'm not twisting the heck out of the knee, leaving the foot trailing behind, turning my hip forward, and my knee pointing this direction where the foot is pointing this direction. So the back foot really needs to turn in a fair bit. And if I have my feet configured correctly, then the ball and socket joint can articulate correctly as I go into the forward bend. And it will go into a hinge action. So that hinge action would look like this. Very natural for the hip to do that. So this is what you're aiming for in your forward bend. If I just reverse the position here, you can see, once again, as I go into a forward fold, that is a very natural thing for my hip to do, or if I go into a lunge, it's a natural articulation for the hip. I hope that this little chat about open and closed hip positions is helpful in your yoga practice. Namaste.